Hey there, I'm David, and this is the third installment of my solid walnut bed build video series in which I describe how I designed and built this queen-sized, shaker-inspired bed frame. Now in the first two videos I talked about the construction of the headboard and the footboard, and there's a lot of important details in there, so if you plan on building one of these yourself, I suggest you check out those videos first. Now in this video I'm going to talk mostly about the side rails, which includes some hidden knockdown hardware so that the bed can be disassembled and moved around. I'll also talk about the slats underneath and some issues I encountered with those and how I solved them, and some finishing touches. So let's get started. While the rest of the bed is built from 3/4 inch stock, the side rails started out 1.5 inches thick and ended up only 1.25 inches thick after they were milled to their final size. The side rails have to be a bit beefier since they hold the entire weight of the mattress. After the usual jointing and planing, I scored the side rails with a knife to sever the wood fibers before cutting them to length. This is to prevent tear out from the table saw blade, which would be highly visible in the final assembled bed. Since permanently attaching the side rails to the headboard and the footboard would create a bed that's basically impossible to get through a doorway or ever move to a different room, I chose to use knockdown hardware on the side rails. There are a lot of different styles of hardware that serve this exact purpose, but I chose a type that's mortised into the end grain of the rails and the bed legs. While this is a bit more difficult to install, it's worth it to me because the hardware ends up completely hidden, which is more in line with my shaker inspiration for this bed. After marking out where the mortise and the male side of the hardware goes, I used a palm router with a straight cutting bit to carve out the recess. When I bought this router, it was supposed to come with an edge guide, but it never showed up, so I clamped a piece of plywood to the edge of the router instead. I squared off the corners of the mortise with a chisel and drilled out some small recesses to match the shape of the back of the metal plate, and in the end I got it sitting flush with the surface. I followed a similar process to install the female side of the hardware on the headboard and footboard legs. A very important difference here is that I recessed the metal plate about 1/16 of an inch below the surface of the leg. This is critical because without this added depth, there would be a slight gap between the side rail and the headboard when the bed is assembled. This is because when mated together, the faces of the male and female side of this hardware actually have a 1/16 inch gap in between them. One mistake I made here was using short wood screws to secure the hardware. After test assembling the bed, one of these screws actually sheared off, which scared the crap out of me, so I ended up replacing them with longer, heavier duty construction screws. Next comes gluing the support shelf into the inside of the side rails. This is what the slats will actually rest on. I chose to make this bar out of 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch solid maple. I thought about using pine, but I felt better about the added strength that maple will give the rails. For the slats, I used cheap 1x6 pine boards from the big box store. These aren't actually attached to the bed, so it's really easy to replace them if needed. In retrospect, I wish I had used beefier 2x6s instead of 1x6s. After test assembling the bed, I found that these slats were bending a lot under the weight of just the mattress and myself. To fix this problem, I built a central support bar out of a single 2x4 by cutting off the end, tapering it, and reattaching it to the leg in the center with a mortise and tenon joint. I didn't bother sanding this really or making the joint perfect because it isn't ever seen and it does its job really well. I only attached this to the slats, not to the headboard and the footboard, so it's also completely removable. Attaching it to the headboard and the footboard would actually add a lot more support, but I found that this support bar worked plenty well when only attached to the slats, as it distributes the strain on the center slats out to the edge ones. For finished, I used satin Armor Seal, which is a wipe-on poly. I used 4 coats with light sanding in between. Each coat took over an hour, so this was a bit of a pain, but it's worth it for the durability, and I'm super happy with how it looks. Now I can assemble the final bed. One thing I didn't show was gluing very small blocks onto the maple support rails just to prevent the slats from wiggling around. To recap, this bed was designed and built from scratch out of solid walnut, has special joinery in the headboard to allow for expansion and contraction of the large solid panel there, and is fully disassemblable without any tools. And as you can see, this bed is solid as a rock. Thanks for tuning in. If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe because I've got a lot more videos coming your way in the near future. If you have any questions or have built something similar yourself and just want to share, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching.
Where's the bed? Papa built a bed.